For much of film music history, melody has been the cornerstone of storytelling. Composers like Eddie Korngold and John Williams built their iconic scores on memorable, sweeping melodies that became synonymous with the characters and worlds they inhabited. At the heart of this approach lies the leitmotif, a recurring musical theme associated with a character, place, or idea. From the ominous two-note motif in Jaws to the heroic fanfare of Star Wars and the playful tunes in Harry Potter, these melodies have anchored audiences in the narrative, creating emotional and thematic continuity. However, what happens when we abandon melody as a central focus? What if, instead of soaring tunes, we immerse ourselves in texture, rhythm, and atmosphere, allowing music to move beneath the surface, shaping emotions in a more subtler way? This question lies at the heart of a new era in film music, where composers like Volker Bertelmann explore the uncharted possibilities of a textural approach. Today we're going to explore Conclave and its role in this new era of film music. In Conclave, there are basically three primary leitmotifs. One for every time there's conflict between the cardinals, another one to demonstrate sacred tension, and the last one for any moments of revelation. As Volker said, the problem with character scoring is that there are so many characters going in so many different directions. I find that I don't know when I should be playing which character theme. I prefer to use themes to describe specific situations. So, let's begin by analyzing Leitmotif N.1, Conflicting Cardinals. This is the first leitmotif. It is a 12-note cluster, played by strings, specifically cellos, and its role is to highlight ideological and political differences and struggles between the cardinals as they move on through the conclave. It is very textural, it is easy to manipulate, and it is memorable, impactful. Now let's move on to Leitmotif N.2, which is used for sacred tension. The motif is played by the crystal bashet. Now, before we move on, let's take a look at what that instrument is. Let's listen to the motif one more time. So beneath that bed of strings, we have the crystal bashet. And what it does is, throughout the film, it reflects on the duality between faith and ambition. It's a modern and ethereal sound, yet it holds a lot of the sacredness that this whole conclave has and represents. And now, let's take a look at the third and final leitmotif, which is used for moments of revelation. Now, the thing with this leitmotif is that it's a combination of elements. It's a very specific type of texture Volker creates through the use of arpeggios and low-end instruments and special articulations in them. The purpose of it is to show the gravity of any discovery that is made throughout the conclave. It's grounding, it's seat-edging, it brings you forward in this political thriller that is Conclave. And as one can hear in this example, it's a blend of so many sounds, including the crystal bashet. It's when all the other leitmotifs come together and bring meaning to the story through the score. And when we get to see all the descriptions and analysis of the three leitmotifs, we understand why this is so textural, why these at the end of the day are textural motifs. It is through the use of string articulations, like ricochet and pizzicato, or the use of polyrhythms and the use of various meters throughout the score. The crystal bashet is incredibly important, as especially he's manipulating it, so he enhances the color, that sacred, modern, ethereal tone. Same with the synthetic matrix that goes throughout all the score, growing in distortion depending on the gravity of the situation. So textural is the key word here. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna analyze the impact it has throughout the score and in film music. So when exploring his score, Volker said it suggests a second layer that tells the audience something that is not visible, something that is closer to the pulse or heartbeat of the film. You can use a snare drum to describe a voting process, but it is pretty simple and militaristic. For counter-scoring, you want to find something deeper, something more rudimental, something earthy. He also said, we also placed a lot of music in dialogue, but very subtly, just with little awkward crescendos of cello so that you always feel like there's something destructive happening. Suspense can come from just one instrument. It's important to record those instruments very closely. You want a warm, full-on bass sound so that when it comes in, you can feel it in the cinema, like when a bass drum fills up the whole space. I had the idea of using low booms and low bass drums, something that drives the score and builds up to a ramp but always stays in a quiet, small ensemble. And finally, he also spoke about how he uses these elements very consciously to create tension in some moments and a sense of loneliness and longing for truth in others. So, what can we take away from this score? Firstly, as always, lesson number one, the most important, the score serves the story. The score humanizes the sacred ritual that is being presented here. The score enhances the secrecy, the tension, and the gray moral areas that one faces when such a sacred process comes in conflict with human ambition. Besides watching Conclave, to get this idea further into understanding, I highly recommend watching All Quiet on the Western Front. Same director, same music composer, and Volker even won an Academy Award for Best Original Score. Here he uses a harmonium instead of the crystal bashet, but it's the same idea, something that grounds the score while everything works around it, building to a deeper layer in the story. I also recommend Arrival by the late maestro Johan Johansson. Fantastic score which works as well on a very textural, ambient, atmospheric level. And finally, perhaps the score that brought this whole new era of film scoring to life, The Social Network. It marked a turning point in modern film music. This is the score that brought to life that minimalism, that textural approach. So, The Death of Melody, after doing this analysis, it kind of seems like the wrong title. Because this is not about the death of melody. This is about a new beginning. This is about a new era in film music, which I think should be called the Age of Atmosphere. The shift from grand melody-driven stories to subtle, immersive, textural, sonic storytelling. Conclave's score doesn't just accompany the story, it becomes the story, providing that sometimes silence and subtlety speak louder than melody. So consider this a part 1 in an overtime deep dive into the Age of Atmosphere. And thank you very much for checking this episode of Thematic Breakdowns. If you liked it, the button is down below. If you want to stay up to date with content, the button is also down below. And if you really enjoyed it, if you found it really insightful, interesting and valuable, the link to buy me a coffee is in the description. So before we go, let's do one more thing and rebrand this video as Conclave, the Age of Atmosphere. See you in the next one.